get started. Really wanted to give an update to the group about kind of the process and where we stand right now, and then show you guys the vision goals. And you received that ahead of time, and hopefully have been able to at least crack it open and get a sense of what's included ahead of today, hopefully. But I will go ahead and share a screen on the presentation, and we'll go from there. All right, so hopefully that's coming through. Again, we're having a touch base with the CPAC today, and with the idea of coming back to you guys in a month or so to go over some more detailed content as well. But give an orientation of where we're at in the planning process and the anticipated plan structure, the vision and goals will be most of our time today, and then we'll talk about next steps. Printing kind of timeline. As you recall, kind of at the outset of this process we got going, we did a existing conditions analysis, had a lot of great momentum going with initial community engagement, and hit a bit of a roadblock, as everyone did, as the pandemic and the lockdown started. So we ended up pivoting to a lot of smaller group engagement and online engagement to offset what our kind of initially planned engagement program. But we're still able to pull together a pretty solid kind of understanding, reaching dozens and dozens of organizations and thousands of people online and in person with help from staff. So we delivered the community snapshot, kind of the existing conditions assessment. The report was formerly called the Issues and Opportunities report. That was delivered towards the end of last year, and since then we've been doing rounds of engagement focused on kind of the middle task here of developing the vision, and then also kind of starting in on some of the planning work as it relates to the land use framework and some of the vision and goals that you're seeing today. So plan structure, this is kind of how we anticipate content being used that we going over today. There'll be an introductory chapter that explains things and really pulls in a lot of the information from the IOR and the market and demographic analysis that was done. And then the vision and goals, which we'll be going over today, will be kind of the core piece, setting up a land use framework and then 10 chapters and related themes. So basically the content we'll show you today, a lot of it will be folded into a chapter. Some of the theme content is going to be handled a little bit differently, and that's going to be brought in as kind of themes throughout multiple chapters, and we'll cover that in a minute here. And then last but not least, there'll be an implementation strategy that kind of ties all the pieces together and provides the city and the county and partner organizations with kind of a checklist of kind of actions that need to be undertaken to implement the plan. So the land use framework that's kind of happening in parallel with this effort, we got underway last month. The picture you're seeing on the left here, this map, that's the framework that was included in Plan and Allen. So pretty high level, kind of identifies areas where we want to see development, identifies some infill areas where you'd maybe want to prioritize some reinvestment, and really kind of outlines kind of what areas are in play to accommodate new development. That's going to be kind of a starting point for us as we get into this planning effort, but we're going to take it the kind of the next step farther. So we'll likely be developing kind of a growth framework like this, but then we'll be saying kind of within that growth framework, this is how you should be growing. And so the image on the right, that is a map of the kind of generalized land uses we documented as we did existing conditions analysis in the county. And so we'll be looking to kind of populate that development kind of area with desired land use mixes for the future. And so we're going to be working with staff to develop some kind of growth scenarios and development, kind of potential development scenarios to kind of talk about the pros and cons of developing in certain ways. So that work is underway, and that's happening kind of in parallel with the vision and goals we're talking about today. So I mentioned those 10 kind of chapters and themes. We've been meeting with focus groups on each of those chapter kind of content for the last few months. We formed focus groups around each of the chapters on the left: agriculture, housing, economic development, transportation, public facilities and infrastructure, community services, parks and environmental resources. So we have groups dedicated to kind of helping us craft these vision and goals and talk about different potential strategies. that we've been meeting with 2, sometimes 3 times, depending on how conversations are going. We also had groups dedicated to these 3 themes: equity, community health, and sustainability. These themes are really things that kind of emerged out of the outreach process as really key components of our kind of the way we wanted to approach planning in Fort Wayne and Allen County. So as we engage those thousands of folks, these 3 themes really rose to the top. While people wanted to talk about all the topics on the left, there was always some kind of angle to the discussion that led us to kind of chapter. The vision for equity, community health, and sustainability are going to be kind of queued up as what I'd call maybe guiding principles. They're going to be in the front end of the plan that says these 3 things are important to us. These should be top of mind as you talk about any of these other topics. And so the vision. Am I back? All right. When did you lose me? Sorry.
You might want to just do this whole slide again, Brandon.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. All right. Going again. This is a interesting day. Okay. Here we go. All right. Sorry about that, guys. As we get into the plan development, we had focus groups dedicated to each of these chapters and themes. And really, as these themes rose to the top, the plan is to really take the vision that has been developed for each of these themes and really demonstrate it and show how it's really top of mind and important to the county and the city and the community moving forward. And so these will be identified as principles on the front end of the plan, something that really kind of guides overall structure and development of the document. So the vision statements we'll go over today are going to be kind of not isolated in individual chapters, but kind of brought up to the foreground at the beginning of the plan. And then the goals will be used to apply the vision for equity, community health, and sustainability to each individual chapter. So the themes should be, even though we've developed them similarly, they're going to be used differently in the plan moving forward. And that'll be clear, I think, as we get into discussing this. So the vision statement for each group is developed as a kind of a high-level aspirational narrative, about 250 to 300 words. It's what we're trying to achieve in the next 10 to 15 years. Then there's the goal statements, which support that vision. These are what I would refer to as kind of planning buckets. These are ways of organizing the plan content as it relates to each vision into kind of more digestible kind of focus areas. And so with each goal, each planning bucket, we'll develop a series of strategies, and that's kind of the next time we'll meet is to go over those strategies that really support each vision and goals and are a bit more measurable and precise, and really provide specific actions for the city, county, and the partners to implement. And so this is an example of kind of where we started with the focus groups. This is showing the agriculture group. You know, we started with a series of dot voting exercises where we showed kind of, you know, the Post-its in teal are the ones that came through in the previous Planet Allen effort. Ones in orange are ones that came through in the outreach process that we thought would be worth discussing with the group. We used the prioritization that came out of that to say, all right, of these top issues, let's use that to guide our conversation. So let's talk about promoting ag. Let's talk about urban farming. And so we use the kind of efforts from the previous planning effort to help us guide this discussion as a starting point. We then took the notes we got from each group, and this was done kind of live on screen and in virtual workshops. We took the notes we got from each group and used those to create the draft vision and goals. And then we met a second time to make sure everyone was on the same page and in agreement with those. And so here again, kind of ag group goals and some kind of supporting statements. We then had conversations about each goal again and talked about potential strategies and nuances to those goals. And that was used to kind of do a final touch up of the vision and goals that you see, that you'll see today. So with that, we're going to start with the vision and goals that were developed for each group. And the plan is just to kind of, again, we'll provide kind of a high level review of kind of core kind of sentiment of each vision and goals, and then any feedback that you guys want to offer today. We are hoping to get any additional comments if nothing kind of comes up today and you want to kind of offer it up later. We're hoping to get written comments by this Friday if possible, so we can take those into account as we're revising things and developing the more detailed strategies. So any questions on, I guess, the process or how we came up with things before we dive into the actual content? All good? Okay. All right, so I'm going to share screen again, and we're just going to go through, again, the content that's been drafted so far. So economic development, this is a group that I oversaw and helped kind of craft the content for. So I'll go over the groups that I was kind of responsible for first in terms of chapter content, and I'll hand it off to Josh to take over from there. But economic development really kind of focused on kind of maintaining momentum. There's been a lot of reinvestment in the downtown and emphasis on placemaking, kind of paying attention to what's important to employers as we're talking about attracting talent. And so that's definitely a core piece of this vision is how do we kind of maintain momentum that's already going and keep improving and enhancing Fort Wayne and Allen County as an attractive place to kind of want to work and move to. Kind of a complement to that, those community-wide efforts is also making sure things are balanced. So we're not just focusing solely on the downtown, for example. We're focused on how we can make multiple kind of areas within the county and the city attractive to potential employers and to potential kind of talent. So making sure there's an emphasis on balance and inclusive community reinvestment. That included an emphasis on kind of reinvestment within Southeast Fort Wayne and other disinvested areas of the community. That was Southeast Fort Wayne, and kind of the need for inclusive growth was definitely a core theme throughout the outreach process, and it was seen as a key economic issue, something that if we're failing in a certain area of the county, that's gonna mean we're failing elsewhere. We need to make sure everyone's being brought up to make sure the region's succeeding at its maximum potential. So kind of the focus on that balanced growth, talent attraction, and placemaking were really kind of core components of this vision. And then there's 4 related goals. Goal 1 is ensuring that Fort Wayne and Allen County communities prosper through balanced economic investment and workforce development, improve support systems and targeted business development initiatives that prioritize reinvestment. 2 was continuing to invest in downtown Fort Wayne and outlying communities to improve quality of place and establishing centers for art, culture, entertainment, and sports throughout the area. 3 was coordinating infrastructure and multimodal transportation improvements with local economic development efforts. So again, making sure you're kind of tying the 2 together as you're looking to expanding the inventory of various types of sites to accommodate future commercial and industrial. And then 4 is expanding community's reputation as a welcoming, business-friendly, and inclusive place that fosters entrepreneurship, innovation, and business growth. Kind of the entrepreneurial ecosystem was a phrase that was used by the group quite a bit. So so that is the economic development vision and goals. I don't know if anyone had any thoughts on that draft content before we move on to the next. All right. Hearing none, we'll just move on. Housing neighborhoods was the next group. And again, this is a group I led kind of engagement with, but here we're talking about kind of responsible growth and development and looking at encouraging kind of a variety of housing types. So looking at maximizing use of existing infrastructure, preserving vital agricultural areas, so that balance between kind of growth and development and expansion. So really kind of looking at what can we do to encourage reinvestment and prioritizing infill where we can, and providing kind of the diverse range of housing options, recognizing it can't all be the half-acre single-family home lots for into the future. There needs to be kind of a much broader perspective range of housing offered in the region moving forward. again, that emphasis again on reinvestment and strengthening neighborhoods with including adaptive reuse, historic preservation, providing for neighborhood amenities as well. So the 4 goals that go with that are 1, promoting targeted reinvestment and preservation strategies to strengthen existing neighborhoods. 2, encouraging responsible balanced growth to meet housing demand while avoiding premature development of farmland and open space. 3 was enabling diverse and accessible housing choices, along with creative design and development solutions. And then 4, supporting investment to beautify neighborhoods, enhancing local mobility and connections to other areas to foster safe, healthy, active living. So that's the review of housing. Brian or James, I don't know if you had any feedback or if there's or any thoughts on housing before we move on.
No, I don't have any comments.
Yeah, I think it sounded good so far.
Okay. And so I'm going to hand it off to Josh next, who's you want to start with ag, Josh, or which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, sure. And okay, you're going to keep your screen shared.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay, so big picture for agriculture, we tried to capture the idea of preserving and protecting the county's agricultural heritage, helping new farmers and small farmers, the idea of embracing agricultural innovation, connecting farms to distribution, and helping people be able to purchase locally grown produce and meat. And then there's an emphasis on agribusinesses, livestock, and those industries. This vision also touches on food access, buying local produce, and being able to easily visit area farms to connect residents with their to their food and to the county's agricultural heritage. Goals for this one are to promote sustainable agricultural production and innovation in Allen County. 2, expand access to local healthy produce and food by improving the local production and distribution systems. 3, encourage the preservation and stewardship of productive agricultural land in Allen County. 4, to promote agritourism in Allen County. And 5, attract new agribusinesses that support local agricultural production. Any comments or
Yes, this
thoughts
is
on
Brian. This is Brian. I've got some comments.
Sure.
66% of the land base in Allen County is agriculture. Of that, approximately 2% is in the vegetable gardens end user. The vast majority is production agriculture, corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa, and some offshoots of cereal, rye, and barley. I applaud your goals as stated there, but you've overlooked the vast majority of what Allen County's agriculture truly is. Has very little in the way of food productions to the end user. There is some, and I think it should be part of the goals. But somewhere in there, I just don't feel that agriculture is being represented in this plan as it is in the county. This is a lot of, I'm going to use the term feel-good goals that really doesn't apply to the vast majority of agriculture. James, would you want to speak to any of that?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up good points in the type of agriculture that we have. I do though think that maybe, again, this is just kind of the big picture moment here that I'm sure they'll go in deeper on, but in the discussions that I think I remember on this, I do think that goal number 1 and and goal number 3 really hit on that rural agriculture that we have. It doesn't maybe explicitly say, you know, the corn, wheat, livestock production, but having a goal that encourages the preservation of productive agricultural land, I think is quite a step even over the last comprehensive plan, because there was a line about prime focusing development not on prime agricultural ground, but we never actually talked about finding ways to preserve agricultural ground over and prioritize that over development. And I think even promoting agritourism kind of helps, like even gets to it a little bit, but so I can see where it's in there. It just may not be exactly or explicitly as clear on the balance of agriculture.
I agree with everything you just said. One of the things that is currently high in agriculture in Allen County's mind is the inequitability of taxation on farm ground for things such as fire districts, and how going forward is that needs to change. And I know this is getting into more politics, but I'm a retired farmer, so I sow seed. Please don't take anything I say personally. I throw out ideas and rely on other people to respond, and that's exactly what James did, and I agree with everything he said. Just wanting the people, the powers to be, to realize what agriculture, the large majority of agriculture, looks like in Allen County.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and James. I know you were there for I think all the focus groups on this topic. It certainly wasn't lost on the groups that the majority of agriculture in the county is not, just like you said, it's not vegetables, and we definitely touched on that. I think another, in addition to where James pointed out that some of the goals address that, maybe one sentence where we could take care of something like that is second to last there. When we're talking about agribusiness, even the livestock industry, when you're talking about the majority of the cropland is dedicated to corn, soybeans, you know, corn is primarily grown for livestock feed. So I think that kind of could fit in there as well. A lot of that corn could go along with that larger agribusiness. And there was an emphasis certainly on that in those focus groups.
Okay, and again, I don't mean to be critical. I'm just voicing ideas and concerns that I have.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm not taking it as a criticism. I think it's a good point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess we can.
Josh, I think one other issue that maybe we could discuss just a little bit is the idea of creating a more defined edge between urban and suburban versus rural and agricultural areas. I don't know if you have any ideas on how we could look at doing that at this point, but I think that's an issue that's also come up that maybe could be looked at in terms of the strategies moving forward.
Yeah,
or go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say that the land use framework I mentioned earlier, that's going to be a key piece of this, right? Is actually showing on a map, these are the areas preferred for development over kind of outward expansion or leapfrogging and going into other areas. So the plan is definitely going to have discussion about best practices like smart growth and, you know, making sure you're tying into existing infrastructure, avoiding leapfrog. You know, the devil will be in the details in terms of how we craft the policies about, I guess, making sure that we're encouraging that kind of development, but that I think that's definitely the intent here.
Yeah, so I had a discussion with Pat the other day, again, just trying to figure out how we maybe define productive agricultural land.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gets back to, again, the definition of a prime and looking at potential. So we were trying to find some ways that were more objective than subjective. And then, but one thing I do like about our current plan, and as it relates to development, is it does try to focus development on adjacent growth. And I think while that's in the plan, I'm not sure that it's maybe emphasized enough or reiterated enough with our actual planning boards when they make decisions. Simply because, I mean, I see it frequently on Plan Commission is adjacent. Some people may see as, oh, well, within this map view, I see housing addition within like a mile. So that they consider that adjacent. Whereas to me, adjacent is more almost right next to. So it's maybe just, you know, kind of tweaking that. Like I recognize, you know, growth is going to happen, but if you just start popping up houses in the middle of a cornfield, it then reduces the value of that agricultural property around it.
I think.
I'd like to speak to some, in addition to the housing and development in that respect, we also have a lot of cottage industries going in that are totally non-ag related, a lot of cabinet factories, and that's just one that comes to mind. And we need to, if they're gonna be allowed to put these cottage industries in, then they need to be taken out of Ag 1 as far as a taxation and be taxed at a higher rate, because that ground now is making more money than what it would if it was farmed. And to represent the additional burden to the taxes because of need to improvement of roads, pointing out to the fire territory and things like that, because they're taxed at the percentage of ag property, that something needs to be addressed here to try and rein in these cottage industries. We've got industrial parks in the town of Grayville and Woodburn that have empty lots that are shovel ready with all the amenities, 3-phase power, gas and everything, that are sitting empty, and we're allowing these cottage industries to be popping up on Ag 1 zoning. So I don't know how, I guess in your overall and sort of vague way of encouraging preservation is in there. And I guess, like you said, Brandon, the devil's in the details, how I go about that.
Yeah, I just think about the kind of the crossover with all of these visions, or several of these visions and goals. And there's in other areas, the vision and goals promote infill as a component of sustainability and as a component of new development, and identifying sort of those contiguous annexation policies or contiguous development policies. And then maybe there's areas for identifying agricultural preservation areas as well. So maybe a threefold kind of approach. Anyone else want to speak to agriculture? Otherwise, I can move on to community services. Okay. So big picture for community services and education. This one's all about emphasizing the need for partner entities and service organizations to work with the city, the county, the adopting municipalities. Big focus on equity and inclusion in services and resources. Emphasis on learning at all stages of life, lifelong learning, and just in general, an environment where services and resources are easily available no matter where you live in Fort Wayne or Allen County. So the goals here are to support school districts and higher education institutions to ensure access to high quality responsive education for all within Fort Wayne, Allen County. Foster education and employer partnerships to build a skilled workforce. Encourage collaboration with education and community and social service providers to increase communication and participation in community decision making. Support and partner with education and community and social service organizations to improve education, employment, and other quality of life outcomes for area residents, and to ensure that the city and county departments collaborate with community and social service providers to support vulnerable populations, including people with special needs, individuals with disabilities, their families, and the community's ethnically and linguistically diverse population. So really tying together education, support services, and lifelong learning with the county's array of community service providers. That's what this vision statement is about, and that's what the goals are supporting here. Any thoughts on this one?
I do think it is really good. And then I guess the only thing I want to make sure, I mean, I think it's in there just in the wording. I mean, we always think of education as being, you know, school, like it's either high school, middle school, or college. Just make sure we include, you know, the other education options such as extension, which is more outreach type education versus a formal education platform. But like I said, I mean, big picture wise, it's probably in there in the wording. I mean, we're technically a county department as extension, so.
Okay. Brian, did you have any thoughts on this? Any input? Okay.
No, I don't.
All right, I'll move on to Parks and Environment. This vision statement is all about considering these the city and the county's sort of core community asset, one of the core community assets. The vision statement's about incorporating nature into everyday life, considering stewardship and community involvement in parks and areas of natural environment, and then a focus on protection and collaboration as far as wetlands, tree canopy, waterways, the natural areas that should be preserved. So the vision statement really aims to tie together the recreation, both active and passive, that you get in the community's park system, with the natural stewardship, the open spaces that are not agricultural but are natural open spaces that need to be preserved. So the goals here are to ensure all residents have equitable access to parks, open spaces, and trails to meet increasing current and future demand, to provide accessible and connected trails that offer high quality opportunities for recreation that meet the health and activity needs of the community, encourage community stewardship of natural and flood-prone areas and environmentally sensitive lands to increase a sense of appreciation and local pride in the county's open spaces and natural areas, protect and restore Fort Wayne and Allen County's local watersheds, riparian areas, forested lands, and natural habitats. And fifth, improve outdoor passive and active recreation and tourism opportunities through increased awareness of the parks, trails, riverfront amenities, and natural areas. And open to input on the Parks and Environmental Resources vision and goals.
Yeah, I really like your goals 3 and 4, but I think maybe part of it ought to be education of the general public of the importance of watersheds, flooding areas, natural areas. A lot of people, I'm going to say inner city, urban, even urban areas, don't realize the importance of drainage to this county, because it was once the whole biggest chunk of it was the wetlands, a big lake, and without proper drainage and the necessity to maintain that, life wouldn't be possible here. So I'd like to see a part of that goal as maybe a sixth, or incorporated into maybe number 4, an education part of that, to educate the more urban and inner city people about the importance of drainage and watersheds and forested lands and that whole natural habitat thing.
Okay, yeah, the education component. I think if you we'll definitely take a look at the goal that you mentioned there, and then I think you'll also see a little bit of that come out in our sustainability vision and goals, which is coming up next.
Okay, thank you.
James, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, a lot of these, not necessarily my wheelhouse, but I do think the groups did put in some good effort and are looking great. I would agree that education, I think, is a big part of what even the groups that work, the community organizations that work with parks and environmental resources, education is a big component of what they do. So I think if there's a way to work education in there within that, definitely seems in line with everything.
Well, thanks. Okay, I'll move on to sustainability.
Well, let's I think we're gonna do the chapters first. We'll do the
Oh,
themes last. So I'm gonna hand it over to Jonathan, who can discuss transportation and then infrastructure.
Sounds good. I just listening to the comments from the last one, so many of the conversations we had, education and awareness could be a theme woven through all of them. It seemed like a lot of feedback from everyone on just making people more aware of what already was going on, or how to plug them into things. And in both of these 2 chapters, transportation and mobility and the public facilities and infrastructure, certainly heard some of that. From the focus groups, we really focused in on what we were really trying to achieve with the vision statement was supporting the other chapters, specifically with transportation. You'll notice in that second sentence there, the term safe, accessible, affordable, connected for all users. That was something that came up over and over again, an emphasis on all of those drivers for success, and a focus on engaging all modes and all users. Another priority that we heard throughout each of the meetings was an emphasis on active and alternative transportation. So that was something that was woven through each of the different goals here. As far as the goals for this, we've got provide high quality infrastructure for all transportation modes and systems that utilize best practice models for safety, maintenance, reliability, access, and connectivity. Our second one, increase multimodal transportation opportunities through updated policies, improved public transparency, and improved system integration across the entire Allen County area. 3, develop consistent and sustainable funding sources for an integrated multimodal transportation system by expanding advocacy coalitions, improving employer coordination, increasing municipal staff support, and addressing tax constraints. 4, we had expand active and alternative transportation options that focuses on existing gaps, encourages inclusion and new development, addresses demand barriers, and develops an equitable prioritization system. 5, better integrate new transportation technology and emerging best practices into the transportation network by addressing regulatory discrepancies, incorporating data-supported decision-making, and prioritizing equity. 6, support placemaking efforts that balance safety factors, functional improvements, beautification, and environmental improvements while leveraging state and regional funding systems. Both of these chapters have a lot of goals to cover a broad variety of areas here, and certainly we see a lot of overlap with the other chapters. Any thoughts on our vision and goals here for transportation and mobility?
No, I think the goals get above my level of expertise, but definitely the vision I think is kind of spot on from my understanding of the community.
Brian, how about you?
I'm in the same camp as James. It's above my pay grade. I value what you've got in there, especially the importance of transportation and not just to few, but to all. What the future looks like is anybody's guess.
Sure.
Just imagine back 10 years ago and talking about electric vehicles, and here we are today. So who knows what 10 years is going to look like, but it's a very good foundation.
Well, one of the things I didn't say about transportation is that after the last master plan, 3 separate transportation supplemental documents were created. That was the bike Fort Wayne, walk Fort Wayne, and bus Fort Wayne, and those provide another layer of detail, and we want to see this plan build on that, but also be referential to the updates for each of those documents. Well, let's move on to the public facilities and infrastructure. Now, similar to the other chapters, this is one that I think underpins a lot of the other areas, a lot of the other chapters that we're seeing, and there's overlaps from the themes within each of these chapters as well. From the focus groups, we heard a lot about trying to make this chapter more usable, particularly for the utility entities. They saw utility infrastructure as key to development, so we were trying to reflect that in these vision and goals. Really wanted to encourage collaboration between the communities. That was a theme that was carried over from the previous plans, and one that we heard time and time again is something we wanted to emphasize within this iteration. Some emerging areas that wasn't part of the last master plan, and this builds on what you were saying, Brian, about emerging technologies, is broadband. It's one that has certainly come into focus here with the pandemic and people being remote, e-learning. So as necessary infrastructure updates, we wanted to make sure that that was addressed as well. As far as the goals go, we have improved collaboration between public and private utility providers and stakeholders to better plan for strategic growth and development, improve existing water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater systems through the creation of informed, sustainable solutions and proactive strategies while prioritizing maintenance of these systems. 3, expand and improve broadband access across underserved areas of the community while preserving local character. 4, work with stakeholders, organizations, and governmental entities to strengthen environmental resiliency. 5, ensure adequate public safety services through increased collaboration as part of planning for new growth and development. 6, improve public safety outcomes through increased outreach, education, and community relationship building initiatives. And that's where that education and awareness comes back through in this goal.
Question on number 3.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean while preserving local character?
I mean, to me, I think it's something where we're trying to keep in mind where some of these cell towers go, where the lines and other infrastructure goes, so as not to disrupt some of the other chapters and the emphasis that we have in things like placemaking.
Okay, and one comment I'd like to make in regards to the broadband and everything. Today's agriculture would be hard pressed to be without good internet connection. It is just amazing how many times during the day you pick up your phone and access something on your phone on the internet, and even to the point now that our equipment can be diagnostically done, and our dealership is contacting us and telling us we have a problem before we even know it. So the whole thing, and this is I know it's a statewide push as well. They've dedicated several $1 million towards researching this and how's the best way to get broadband across the whole state. So, and with the pandemic, it certainly pointed out the importance of broadband.
James, anything you want to build on with this?
No, I mean, from extension standpoint, even like the broadband is definitely, you know, a big thing. And again, the collaboration aspect I think is pretty important. But otherwise, facilities and infrastructure is a little outside of my knowledge base.
They're not the flashiest of the chapters, but they certainly underpin a lot of the other areas that we've focused on within the comp plan.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. So I'll go to equity, which is the first theme we'll cover, and then Josh has got the last two, and then that's the content we had kind of slated for today. So again, the themes, the way we envision using these is really as kind of guiding principles at the outset of the plan document, and then the goals you see here will likely be applied kind of across chapters. So, you know, you can see the first goal here kind of related to housing would slot into a discussion about equity as it relates to housing in the housing chapter, for example. So that's how this content, even though it's being kind of developed in a similar kind of process, it's going to be used a little bit differently than the other vision and goals, which will be more isolated to each chapter. So with that said, the equity group really focused on kind of providing for kind of quality local economic development, quality housing, neighborhood amenities, all at that kind of neighborhood scale. And when we took a step back after the first meeting and thought through kind of what we had heard, the concept of a complete neighborhood or a 15-minute neighborhood was something that seemed to encapsulate what was being said pretty well, meaning that, you know, within your walkable kind of neighborhood, you've got the amenities you need to have quality of life. So you've got a range of housing options available locally. So we're trying to get away from having isolated pockets of multifamily or single family, but trying to have a spread of kind of housing types available at the local scale. Having local kind of business and economic development opportunities. You know, we're not saying it has to be on every street corner, but at least, you know, within striking distance of your kind of core neighborhood, you've got these local opportunities available. Looking at opportunities for kind of improvements to neighborhood infrastructure. And making sure, kind of, I think as it was said by one of the focus group members, we want to have everyone kind of have the same footing. So before we talk about all the bells and whistles and these key kind of core projects, we want to make sure everyone has the same kind of icing on the cake before we talk about the cherry. So giving everyone kind of equitable access to the kind of neighborhood infrastructure investment amenities available. So really, at the end of the day, that complete neighborhood or 15-minute neighborhood concept kind of encapsulated what was being discussed. So the goals related to equity, one was providing attainable, accessible housing options in established and future neighborhoods to allow for housing choice for all residents. 2 is fostering walkable, neighborhood-focused commercial and mixed-use development to expand access to everyday needs and employment opportunities. 2, promoting balanced growth and equitable infrastructure investments in urban and rural areas across the community. 4 is support improvements to expand multimodal connectivity and enhance public transit service across the community. And 5, support equitable access to high quality community services and education for all residents. So again, you can see how some of these goals could slot pretty easily into a chapter. Others, it might be more nuanced, and it's really a goal that can apply to a couple chapters, but the idea is that this content will then inform those other kind of pieces we've already talked about today. So James or Brian, any comments, reaction?
Yeah, I really think all of that is great. You know, I think it leads to better development. It is important that everybody has equal access, equitable access to all the great services we have in the community, but then also, again, development and housing infrastructure, all of that, I think it just leads to building a better place than. So yeah, I really do like all of that.
I'd like to comment on number 3 about the promote balanced growth and equitability. That whole thing, to me, it's really important because Allen County is so diverse from the inner city to urban to rural that everybody gets an equal shot at things. I mean, and that's not saying that I need to have a grocery store within walking distance of my house, but I need to have the infrastructure so that, and it's maintained so that I can get to that grocery store and things like that. And that's just an off the wall example. There's been, in the past, there's been some, let me think of the terminology. Double standards, I want to say, in the rural community at least, where one group is held to one standard and another group is held to something else, and we need to get back to a level playing field for all. Mm-hmm. And so I like that in number 3 in there.
Okay. And yeah, and I will say, I mean, we are just, I think it's an important distinction that we clarified with the group and we've clarified with other groups, is that we are talking about equity, not equality. So we are recognizing that investment hasn't been the same in the past, and we need to kind of compensate for that as we talk about providing an equal playing field. So it's not just moving forward, everyone gets the same treatment. It's recognizing that some areas need more attention depending on what we're talking about. So that's the angle that we're taking with this, kind of regardless of geographic location.
Yes, so. Absolutely, I agree.
Okay, I'll hand it over to Josh, who's going to walk through community health, and then we'll finish on sustainability.
Okay, thank you. Community health, the vision is built around the idea of health and well-being being a central component of quality of life in Fort Wayne, Allen County, and the rest of the adopting communities. Emphasizes a coordinated community effort between public agencies and private service providers, focus on high quality healthcare services, and then touches on some of those aspects of the physical environment like walkability and bikeability that contribute to community health. There's a discussion of farm health and educational partnerships, and then a focus on urban and rural areas and the need for better access to healthy food and health services when you're further out in the county. Goals here: promote built environment and neighborhood design that supports healthier, safer, and more active lifestyles. 2, support improvements to transit services to increase access to healthcare and fresh food throughout the county. 3, improve equitable access to fresh and nutritious food in Allen County's urban and rural communities. 4, increase access to outdoor recreation opportunities for all ages. 5, promote equitable healthcare access across language and socioeconomic barriers by building on and improving the community's existing system of care And 6, encourage collaboration between healthcare providers and service organizations to better inform the public about the importance of healthy lifestyles. And again, you can see how these goals sort of start to touch on some of the other chapters. Like Brandon was saying, this is a theme that kind of transcends chapters and will touch on everything. So any questions or comments on this vision statement or the goals?
I think it's really good. It's overarching. I mean, several of those things popped up in multiple chapters, and I think, you know, as we look at planning and development, community health is an important factor in all of that.
Yeah, thanks, James.
I really appreciate number 5 because of the diverse cultures that we have. I'm thinking of the Burmese and language barriers there, and the different socioeconomic barriers that may be out there. We need to be doing a better job of reaching into those communities, and I think that says it pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Brian. We certainly heard about the importance of language access in these focus groups. Wanted to make sure that it was included. Okay, last but not least, sustainability, another theme that will touch on several areas of the plan. So the vision here is about, again, a coordinated effort between public and private sectors, whether you're talking corporate partners or local organizations, or even at a residential scale, thriving neighborhoods, the importance of sustainability to all of those areas, emphasis on sustainability in development policies and practices, and an emphasis on outreach and education to promote sustainability. The vision talks about best practices for growth, including sustainable infrastructure extension and the importance of intergovernmental collaboration on sustainability efforts. This was a really engaged group, and we had a lot of good discussion as we put together this vision. The goals, number 1, encourage a higher density of mixed housing types with, or I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. Number 1 now is encourage support for preserving existing neighborhoods and a higher density of mixed housing types with walkable, well-connected neighborhoods that are close to jobs, services, and recreation, which will preserve farmland, natural areas, and open spaces and put less strain on municipal infrastructure. Number 2, continue to recognize agricultural uses as valued economic assets and foster responsible growth that minimizes redevelopment of farmland. Number 3, incentivize and promote the use of sustainable, energy-efficient design practices to reduce the environmental impact of future development and infrastructure. Number 4, promote active modes of transportation that reduce vehicle miles traveled, including bicycling, walking, and transit. And then number 5, promote collaboration among environmental organizations, utility providers, governmental entities, and community stakeholders to conserve wetlands and other natural areas, protect flood-prone areas, manage stormwater, and improve water quality in the community's waterways. So again, some wide-ranging goals, and you can see coming at things like bicycling, walking, and transit. You know, on the other page, we were looking at that through the lens of community health, and now looking at it through the lens of how those can impact things like vehicle miles traveled. Any thoughts or comments on sustainability, vision, and goals?
I think they're all real good. Number 5 is probably nearest to my heart because of water quality and issues. It's been said that water will become the next gold, and we may be very well be seeing that as currently out in the West, they're starting to see a drought develop, and where our water ends up is in Lake Erie, and what we do in Allen County affects Lake Erie, which is sometimes falling on deaf ears in our elected officials, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I think you're, I mean, right on there, Brian. I grew up in Southern California, which has a ton of droughts, but I just heard the other day, I think that Illinois is technically in a drought, which, that could certainly be a warning call. It doesn't look like a drought out there, but we need to listen to the experts. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to Brian. I really think this is a good section. And even with number 2 there, fostering that responsible growth, getting that balance back with farmland, because while yes, I acknowledge growth needs to happen, it still needs to be done wisely, because while we are a large county, if we grow, and just kind of build wherever and develop wherever, that's going to further reduce the ag ground, and eventually that's going to all disappear. Unfortunately, there's no new land being created in Allen County. So keeping that in mind as we develop and grow, to keep that balance, I think, is really important to sustainability.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to Brandon.
All right. Well, I'm just going to share screen back on the PowerPoint, and then we can see if there's any other questions you guys have or concerns. So again, just to kind of recap next steps and what we're doing with all this, the input we've been collecting. We already met with a technical working group. We've been meeting with staff on and off to review these vision and goals. So everything you've seen today has been revised, I think, third or fourth time over at this point. So really, it's about getting into that next step of details. So I think as some of the earlier on conversation was about kind of these goals are great. They're, good high level kind of starting point. And the next point kind of review with this group, with the CPAC, will be kind of those kind of bulleted strategies to give you a sense of what's going to fall under each goal. So if we've got 5 goals for housing or sustainability, kind of what strategies are going to support that kind of, and that'll hopefully give the group kind of a good sense of what we'd call the draft plan framework, basically the outline for the plan that we'll be developing over the next few months. So we'll be reviewing those with staff first, and then it'll go out to the CPAC to review and have an in-person meeting on to review the goals along with the strategies. I mentioned that land use scenario discussion earlier. We're working on kind of standing up the modeling for that, so we can have basically a half-day workshop with staff to go over some different scenarios. We're actually going to be, saying, we need to accommodate X amount of acres of residential development over the next, decade or so. How should we best do that? And then that'll obviously have the complement of saying, this is where we can accommodate growth. We know we're growing, let's put this in perspective and agree on kind of a path forward. And that means we're drawing a line about where we want to encourage growth versus where we want to encourage preservation. So basically that land use piece and the strategies get folded together into a comprehensive discussion about where the plan is going. So we'll have the vision and goals and strategies complemented by that land use framework, just to have a really well-informed conversation with the CPAC as a next step to say, all right, here's the draft plan, basically outline. Give us the green light to start developing this content in more detail and really work on that comp plan document. And we'll also be providing kind of elected officials, with the update as well. And then we'd like to do some kind of public review, kind of an open house style with that content once it's gotten everyone's kind of blessing or review. And that kind of takes us back to really hoping to have a document. It probably won't be completed for adoption, I think, in December. But it will be ready for that kind of process to start. So we'll make sure at the end of the year we've got a really good draft, and we've got something that's ready for kind of public consumption by the end of the year. So that is the overall timeline. And with that, that's kind of the end of our presentation. So James or Brian, I don't know if you have any questions about the process or where we're headed or. Any kind of parting comments?
I just want to say, I feel really fortunate to be a part of this process, and in some ways, I'm really glad that there wasn't a big attendance, because I had a bigger voice, as I stated earlier. But I appreciate all the hard work that's going into this, and I think it's an effort that will provide a really good outcome for years to come.
Great.
Yeah, I don't really have any other questions. So just I'm here if you got questions on any of the stuff. So enjoy providing feedback and helping the process.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you and Pat were chatting about that, like you said, the objective way of measuring kind of prime ag land. So that's one of the final pieces we're trying to pull together for this land use scenario discussion. So I'll follow up with Pat to see if, I guess, where those conversations have gone. But okay, well, we're going to give the rest of the group end of the week. Maybe we can give them a little bit more time, but to get some written comments on the vision and goals. I think we'll make this presentation available. I think we have to figure out how big the file ends up being, how we can share it with the group, but we can make this available as well. Maybe edit out my screen drop. Sujan, help me out. But all right, anything else, Pat or Sharice or team?
Brandon, if we could just talk real quick after we wrap this up.
All right. All right, well, yeah, Brian and James, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your input and for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.